and as they went down on Apple Valley Court, the actual resident was halfway down on the street. The first officer arrived, was looking in that area, was able to see the dogs running loose, and as they were looking for the victim at the time, they continued down the street and was able to see the victim inside a vehicle with their boyfriend, and where he was trying to help her and render aid. So right out immediately, he's there. We got called. We were there within 5 minutes. He found the victim, started rendering first aid.
How many dogs, and do you know what kind of dogs?
There are 2 dogs. I'm not exactly sure on the breeds.
Guys got the situation under control. How were your officers able to do that?
Well, first thing we did was, it was pretty chaotic at first because the dogs were loose and we did have a victim that needed our help. So the first officer on scene was able to render aid and would put 2 tourniquets on the victim. He was able to try to get what he can through that. He was immediately was calling for different officers to respond and calling for as many as that could, because knowing that the dogs were still loose. As officers did arrive and began to help, they start looking for the dogs, found them a couple yards up, and were able to get them back into the yard where they escaped from. The gate was open. So they were able to use of less lethal, being a pepper ball, to be able to get the dogs back into the yard and be able to get where they needed to be.
Did you all have any conversations with the owners just about their dogs being loose and whether they knew that was the case? What was that like?
If it's, from my understanding, the way that I interpreted everything is that the owners were not home. So our officers attempted to make contact numerous times at the front door to get the owners out there. They were not home, but their dogs were left outside, out back. Once they were there, we had numerous conversations about the entire thing with the owners. Very cooperative, working well with us to be able to do what we need to.
Part of calling this press conference was obviously because of just the actions by the dog warden, or the inaction of the dog warden. Can you kind of speak to that and your concerns with how they maybe handled this?
Well, I don't know if I want to go too far about how it could have or should have or would have been handled. I think what's important here, and especially with the victim, is that we're concerned that the dogs are still there. This was a pretty vicious attack. The law talks about this type of thing as a bite. I mean, the poor soul was mauled. She's going to have a long road for recovery for sure. I would have liked to have seen the dogs removed from the scene. In fact, our officers asked the dog warden to remove them. They were told no. They then facilitated with the owners of the dog, asking if they're willing to give up the dogs, and could we, facilitate the dog warden taking them on their behalf. And they asked if we could. We attempted that as well. The dog warden said that they would need to get clarification and check with a supervisor. They did such, and the answer came back that they were not going to take the dog still.
As the dogs are still in that neighborhood, is there an increase in surveillance or worry for this street, as we don't really know a time that the dogs will be removed?
So the way that the law is written in the administrative code, which that is not the same section that we typically enforce, so I've read a lot about this over the last 3 days. There is a required quarantine period of 10 days, and a quarantine has to be inside the residence, has to be inside of if the dog goes outside to use the restroom, it has to be, there's certain requirements for that. Dog leash has to be inside a locked fence, so on and so forth. So that quarantine still is still there, and it's still in effect. We were there last night just to check with the victim and talk to her, and then we also checked with the homeowner and verified that the dog is following the quarantine orders.
So that victim's out of the hospital then?
Yes, I was with her earlier today.
I mean, this woman was mauled in front of her children in the car. Neighbors have been telling us there's a lot of kids in that neighborhood that play in the street all the time. I mean, at what point is it enough? And, the dogs do get taken away. I mean, they're still there.
That's something I'm trying to figure out myself. I mean, it's not within our purview or our authority to remove the dog. As a township, that's what we have to rely upon, is we have the dog warden. The dog warden has the authority to do such thing. Some actions require court orders. Some actions says that they can remove them immediately. We're still trying to figure out what that is, and we have been working with the township administration, as well as the county administration's been working on that as long with the dog warden, trying to figure out those answers too, because we're asking the same question.
Is there a clear next step for you guys? Because like we've been saying, I mean, the residents out there are obviously still concerned, and from what I hear, they voicing those concerns to anyone within this building that'll listen?
Yeah, I mean, right now, the next steps is we're trying to figure out, I can't stop the event that already occurred, but I can sure try to work towards the future. And that's what we're trying to figure out, is how are we going to make it better in the future? So what can we do? Is there a way that we can get the dogs that even the owners are willing to give up out of the house, out of the neighborhood? And what can we do to make this better in the future?
Has the dogs had a history, sorry, have the dogs history of, getting out of the fence or attacking people in the past or anything like that?
We're also told that they're possibly not registered. Is that true?
Two parts. When we go with the first one here, from my understanding, going through our records, we do not have any records of these dogs being out there. There was a loose dog back in August of last year in this general area, but we're not able to determine if that was the same dog or not. The dog was actually gone on our arrival. And registered, it was confirmed that through body camera and through conversation with the dog warden last night on scene that the dogs were not registered.
The victim told us in the hospital they were asking her, if she needed to get a rabies shot, if the dog had gotten one, and she didn't have any idea. She was surprised they didn't know. Is there some kind of protocol that should have happened so communication like that would be, given to the medics and they would know how to treat someone who just been attacked?
That's more of in the purview of the dog warden. So I would ask that same question's asked of them.
Do you know, I've heard some conflicting reports, so, what was the victim exactly, do you know what the victim was doing when the attack happened? I heard she was walking down the street, or I heard another account that she was maybe going up to knock on the owner's door. I mean, do you know what kind of led up to, these dogs attacking her?
Talking with her this afternoon, she was attacked a few doors down from the actual where the dogs belong on the sidewalk. So that's where the actual event took place.
Will you all be releasing that body cam video of the response?
Yeah, we are. I mean, we're redacting it. The attack obviously is not on there, but the response, we have that. Sure.
After speaking with Emily, the victim, she said that there has been little to no communication with police throughout the entire duration. The time that you visited her home today was kind of the first time that you guys spoke with her. Why was that, and what was that conversation like?
So our response for a situation like this, being again a township, is to make the scene safe when this occurs. So we were there. We were able to help secure the dogs, get them back to where the dog warden felt that they were in a safe place inside the residence. That's where our interaction essentially stops. This investigation is of the dog wardens, not ours. We will take a report. We'll interact. We had one of our sergeants there last night talking with her and interacting with her then again, as well as, as you know, today we were out there with her.
I know you said over the past few, since this happened, you've been reading up on the laws regarding this. Do you think that it's adequate to address what a vicious dog is and what, the warden should do if they come up on one?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, it is spelled out pretty well in the administrative code, 955 section about dogs and what a vicious dog is and the requirements to have a vicious dog. I would like to see that there is some sort of a change when we have a situation like this, that the dog is removed for safety of not only the victim, the community, but also even the homeowners.
People are watching this and they know of a dog in their neighborhood that gets out and they're concerned about it. Do you have advice for those people?
Yeah, absolutely. Just call the dog warden. That's the important part. They need to have they need to be able to track the individual, the dogs that's doing what they need to do. So I would call the dog warden and let them know. They are short-staffed, not having a lot of employees, but they're the one that needs to have the record of a loose animal like this.
Chief, listening to the 911 calls and talking to some people who were, around the incident when it happened, it's very evident that some residents were armed and they had made comments about, possibly shooting the dogs. Can you maybe address that and say, why officers were told them that's not a good idea?
It's actually in the administrative code. It talks about that you should not shoot a dog that just bit somebody. It's obviously about rabies at that point. Our officers can shoot a dog if it's actively attacking a person. It's a little bit different when the dog's barking, challenging, or even starting to come towards you. That's completely different than an active attack.
Thank you. I think we're over
Anything else?